Stephen was standing beneath a framed photograph of my wife when he told a room full of people that he was taking over her music. He had one hand around a microphone, the other rested on my daughter's shoulder. Behind them, a banner read, "The Yvonne LeBlanc Legacy Fund." Two local reporters were near the stage. A regional rights representative sat 3 tables from me. People I'd known for 30 years were holding printed programs with Stephen's studio logo on the back. He smiled toward my table. "Leonard's carried this responsibility long enough," he said. "Now, the next generation can protect Yvonne's legacy." A few people clapped. Not everyone did, but enough did. Kimberly looked straight at me. She seemed nervous, though I couldn't tell why. At that moment, I still didn't know how much Stephen had told her. I didn't know if she understood what he was claiming. I only knew my own daughter was standing beside him. Stephen kept talking. He described a reissue deal. Then he announced new licensing plans. He said Bayou Sound Studio would be the home of Yvonne's catalog. He even thanked the bank for believing in the project. That part caught my attention. I looked at Diane Welch, who sat beside me. She didn't move. Her leather folder remained closed on the table. "Let him finish," she said quietly. So I did. I sat in the Atchafalaya room with both hands folded. The air conditioner was blowing directly down my collar. Someone had placed a glass of sweet tea in front of me. I hadn't touched it. Stephen lifted the microphone again. Family should be the first people trusted with family business. He looked right at me when he said it. "My name is Leonard Shaw, and I'm 71 years old. Where are you listening from today?" A year earlier, I never would have imagined sitting there. I certainly wouldn't have imagined Kimberly helping her husband replace me. Not in my own wife's name. Not while using a photograph I'd chosen for her memorial. But that's where we ended up. To explain it properly, I have to go back to December. Yvonne died on a Tuesday morning at Lafayette General. She was 68. We'd been married since 1978, which meant I had spent nearly my entire adult life hearing her sing in one room or another. She sang while making coffee. She sang while looking for her keys. She sang old Cajun tunes when she was annoyed with me. If I asked what was wrong, she'd change the song instead of answering. That Tuesday, the room was quiet except for a monitor. Kimberly sat on Yvonne's right side. I was on the left. Stephen stood near the window with his hands in his pockets. Yvonne had been awake an hour earlier. She squeezed my fingers and asked if I'd fed the cat. We didn't own a cat. I told her I took care of it. She nodded, like that settles something important. Those were the last words we exchanged. Afterward, Kimberly put her face against Yvonne's blanket. She stayed there until a nurse came in. Stephen touched her shoulder, then looked at me. "I'll handle whatever needs handling," he said. I thought he meant the hospital desk, maybe phone calls. "Take care of Kimberly," I told him. "That's enough." He gave a quick nod. I didn't notice then that he looked relieved by my answer. The house on Milton Avenue felt wrong when I returned. Yvonne's blue sweater was hanging over a kitchen chair. Her coffee cup was still beside the sink. She'd left 2 grocery coupons under the sugar bowl. I stood there holding my keys for several minutes. Then I rinsed her cup. I don't know why. It didn't need rinsing. There was only a faint ring at the bottom. Still, I washed it, dried it, and placed it in the cabinet. The next morning, I took it back out. I put it beside the coffee maker, where it stayed. Yvonne had one habit that drove me crazy for 47 years. She would leave a yellow notepad beside the telephone and write half a song on it. Then she'd tear off the page and put it somewhere safe. Safe might mean inside a cookbook. It might mean under a lamp. Once, it meant folded inside an empty rice box. After she died, I found one of those pages in the drawer with the dish towels. It had 3 lines on it and a coffee stain. The last line read, "Keep the old road open." I knew it was probably a lyric. With Yvonne, it could have been about anything. A man leaving town, a woman waiting by the bayou, a road that flooded every spring. I folded the paper and put it in my shirt pocket. That became my morning habit. I'd make coffee, set her cup beside mine, and touch that folded page before starting the day. For most of my working life, I repaired recording equipment. My shop was a narrow place off Jefferson Street. It smelled like solder, dust, and hot wiring. Musicians brought me amplifiers that had been dropped from vans. Churches brought mixing boards after somebody spilled punch across them. Young studio owners brought old compressors they'd bought online and couldn't make work. I liked equipment because it usually told the truth. A burned resistor looked burned. A bad connection crackled. If a machine stopped working, there was a reason. You could open the case, follow the path, and eventually find it. People were harder. Yvonne started performing seriously after we married. At first, it was weekend dances and small festivals. Then a radio station in Lake Charles played one of her songs. A few more stations picked it up. By the late 90s, she had a regional following. Her professional name was Yvonne LeBlanc. LeBlanc was her mother's family name, and she thought it sounded better on a poster. I agreed. I was never her manager. That mattered later. I repaired her equipment, drove when she was tired, and kept receipts. When money started arriving from recordings and songwriting, I organized it. Yvonne wanted nothing to do with statements. She'd slide envelopes across the kitchen table. "You read it," she'd say. "It's your money. It's our money, and you like columns. I don't like columns. You own 3 calculators." That was how most business conversations went. In 2004, Diane Welch helped us form Bayou Rise Publishing. Diane had handled music contracts around Lafayette for years. She knew which agreements were harmless and which ones took your songs forever. We signed everything in her office on a rainy afternoon. Yvonne read about 4 pages. Then she looked at me. "Does this let me keep writing songs?" "Yes," I said. "Does it make you handle the paperwork?" Diane laughed. "That's the general idea." Yvonne signed. I kept one certified copy in a fireproof lockbox at home. Diane kept the original file. After that, Bayou Rise received the royalties, and I handled the statements. It wasn't a fortune. Some quarters were smaller, some were better. A song might get used in a local commercial. A regional artist might record one. An old dance number might appear in a documentary. The checks mattered, but the work mattered more to Yvonne. She'd hear one of her songs playing in a hardware store and stop beside the paint counter. She never pointed it out. She'd just listen until it ended. Then she'd look at me and say, "They sped it up." They usually hadn't. After the funeral home called, Kimberly began organizing the memorial. I let her. She needed something to do, and I wasn't in any condition to argue about flowers. The service was held in January at a hall near downtown Lafayette. The funeral had been private. The memorial was for musicians, friends, and people who knew Yvonne from festivals. Kimberly chose white tablecloths and small glass vases. I chose the photographs. Stephen offered to handle the sound. That made sense. He owned Bayou Sound Studio on Johnston Street. He'd opened it in 2015. At first it was 2 recording rooms and an office. Then he expanded in 2019. He added another booth, new consoles, and a larger live room. He was proud of that studio. Maybe too proud, though I didn't see it then. The morning of the memorial, I arrived early. Stephen was checking microphones near the stage. Kimberly stood at the entrance with a clipboard. She hugged me without setting it down. "Daddy, your tie's crooked. Your mother usually fixed it." Kimberly reached up and straightened it. Her hand stopped for a second. "I know," she said. That nearly broke me. I turned toward the stage so she wouldn't see my face. The framed photograph beside the microphone showed Yvonne at a festival in Breaux Bridge. She was wearing a red blouse and holding her accordion. She was probably 50 in that picture. I remembered standing behind the stage while she performed. One speaker kept cutting out, and I spent half the set holding a cable in place. She never missed a note. People started arriving around 10. Musicians carried old record sleeves. A former radio host brought a box of taped interviews. Neighbors brought food nobody touched. Eugene Howell came in wearing the same brown jacket he'd owned since retirement. Eugene was 73 and had delivered mail for most of his adult life. We met when we were young men. He'd been my closest friend ever since. He stood beside me, studying Yvonne's photograph. "She made you look interesting," he said. "She made everybody look interesting." "That's true." He placed a hand on my back. He didn't say anything else. The memorial lasted nearly 3 hours. People told stories. A local band played 2 of Yvonne's songs. Kimberly spoke about growing up backstage at festivals. She described falling asleep on folded tablecloths while her mother performed. Stephen spoke last. Yvonne wasn't only an artist, he said. She was an opportunity for Lafayette to remember what its music means. The word opportunity sounded odd to me. Not wrong exactly, just odd. Then he announced that Bayou Sound Studio would begin restoring some of Yvonne's older recordings. I looked at Kimberly. She was watching him with a small smile. That was the first I'd heard about restoration work. Afterward, I found Stephen near the sound table. What recordings are you restoring? He continued winding a cable. Nothing formal yet. I've got some ideas. Which recordings? The early masters, maybe. Whatever needs cleaning. They're already clean. He laughed lightly. You know what I mean, Leonard? Modern formats, new audiences. Did you discuss it with Yvonne? His hands stopped. We talked about the catalog. When? Different times. She wanted the songs to keep living. That sounded like something Yvonne might say. It also sounded general enough to mean nothing. I waited. Stephen gave the cable another twist. This isn't the day for business, he said. You brought it up during the memorial. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. I was honoring her. Kimberly walked over before he answered again. Is everything okay? Fine, Stephen said. I said, we're discussing the recordings. Kimberly looked from him to me. Stephen has some good ideas, Daddy. We don't need to decide anything now. I didn't know there was something to decide. She touched my arm. There isn't. Not today. That ended the conversation. At the time, I blamed myself for being sensitive. Grief makes ordinary words feel sharper. I knew that, so I let it go. For about 2 weeks, Kimberly came by nearly every day. She brought gumbo, groceries, and things I hadn't requested. She changed the sheets in the guest room. She threw out medicine from Yvonne's bathroom cabinet. One afternoon, I found her holding Yvonne's perfume bottle over a trash bag. Leave that, I said. She froze. It's almost empty. I know. It's old, Daddy. Put it back. She did. Neither of us spoke for a minute. Then she sat on the closed toilet lid and started crying. I leaned against the sink. I didn't know whether to comfort her or apologize. Finally, she wiped her face. I keep thinking Mom's going to call me. I reached for the phone yesterday. Really? I heard a song she hated. Kimberly laughed through her tears. That was still my daughter. That's important to understand. She wasn't circling my house like a thief. She was grieving. She was trying to help. When she pushed too hard, I believed it came from fear. That belief protected her for longer than it should have. By February, her visits became more organized. She started bringing folders. The first one was blue and labeled Household. Inside were copies of utility bills, insurance information, and a list of phone numbers. I made this for you, she said. I know who provides my electricity. It's just in case. In case of what? In case you need something? I have the bills. She looked around the kitchen. Where? In the desk. Which drawer? I stared at her. She raised both hands. Okay, sorry. I'm just trying to help. I thanked her, though I didn't use the folder. 3 days later, I found a pamphlet beside the coffee maker. The front showed an older man sitting with a smiling woman. Across the top, it said, Protecting Grieving Spouses from Costly Financial Decisions. I read the first page. It warned against major purchases, sudden investments, and unfamiliar advisors. It suggested asking a trusted adult family member to review bank accounts. When Kimberly came by that evening, I held it up. Did you leave this? She set a grocery bag on the counter. I thought it might be useful. Have I made a costly financial decision? No. Have I hired an unfamiliar advisor? No, Daddy. Then why is this here? She opened the refrigerator. You're taking it personally. It was left on my coffee maker. I picked it up at a grief center. You went to a grief center? She paused. Stephen knew somebody who had extras. There it was. His name. I placed the pamphlet on the table. What does Stephen think I'm doing? He doesn't think you're doing anything. Then why does he think I need this? He's worried about you. I pulled out a chair and sat down. Kimberly remained by the refrigerator. She was putting containers on shelves that were already full. What exactly is he worried about? She closed the door. The house, the bills, Mom's music, everything you're handling alone. I handled those things before. You had Mom. Your mother didn't handle bills. You know what I mean. No, I don't. Kimberly sat across from me. She pushed the pamphlet aside. Daddy, nobody's saying you can't manage things. That pamphlet comes close. It's general information. Then take it home to Stephen. Her mouth tightened. I regretted saying it that way, but I didn't take it back. She looked toward Yvonne's cup beside the coffee maker. Then she lowered her voice. Mom's business side is going to get more complicated. Why? Because she's gone. The songs didn't change. The rights might, the estate might. There are taxes. Diane handles the legal work. Diane's getting older too. Diane was 66 and sharp enough to frighten younger attorneys. I said, "Did Stephen tell you that?" Kimberly stood up. "Why do you keep making this about him?" "Because you keep repeating his words." That landed. She grabbed her purse from the counter. "I came here to bring you dinner, and I appreciate it." "No, you don't. I appreciate the dinner. I don't appreciate being studied. Nobody is studying you." She left 10 minutes later. The pamphlet stayed on the table. I almost threw it away. Instead, I placed it in the blue folder. The following Sunday, Kimberly returned with another one. This pamphlet was about organizing financial records after a spouse dies. She put it beneath a stack of mail, as if it had arrived there naturally. I didn't mention it. I watched her move around the kitchen. She opened drawers. She checked expiration dates. She asked whether I had paid the property insurance. Then she asked where I kept the royalty statements. I was pouring coffee when she said it. I kept my back to her. Why? So I can help organize them. They're organized. Where? In my files. Here or at the shop. Why does that matter? She exhaled slowly. "Daddy, can we please not do this every time?" "Do what?" "Make me prove I have good intentions." I turned around. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled back. She had one of Yvonne's old canvas grocery bags hanging from her shoulder. For a moment, I felt ashamed. Then she said, "Let me handle Mom's business side." The kitchen seemed very quiet. What does that mean? Statements, calls, licensing questions? Whatever comes in. Calls from whom? Whoever handles the royalties. You don't know who handles them? I could learn. I already know. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. You don't have to keep proving you can do everything. I'm not proving anything. Then let me help. With what? With Mom's legacy. That word again. Legacy. Stephen had used it at the memorial. I pulled out the chair beside me. "Sit down, Kimberly." She didn't. Instead, she adjusted the grocery bag. "Stephen says families lose control of catalogs after somebody dies. People miss deadlines. They sign the wrong forms. Income gets held up. Stephen runs a recording studio. He works with artists. That doesn't make him our attorney. He's trying to protect what Mom built." "What did your mother tell him she wanted?" Kimberly looked toward the window. "She wanted the music protected." "That isn't what I asked. Why are you interrogating me?" "I asked one question." She picked up her purse. "We can talk when you're less defensive." I watched her walk toward the front door. "Kimberly." She stopped but didn't turn. "Did Stephen ask you to get the statements?" Her hand stayed on the doorknob. After several seconds, she said, "We talked about them." Then she left. I remained at the kitchen table until my coffee cooled. At first, I thought grief had made all of us clumsy. Kimberly wanted a task. Stephen wanted to feel useful. I wanted everyone to stop touching Yvonne's things. That explanation was comfortable. It lasted until I opened the blue folder again. Both pamphlets were inside. Beneath them, I found a blank financial authorization form. It allowed a designated family member to receive statements, speak with banks, and manage recurring income. Kimberly hadn't mentioned putting it there. My name was already typed on the first line. Hers was typed beneath it. Only the signature space remained empty. I carried the form to the lockbox in my bedroom closet. I opened the box and checked the papers inside. Everything looked untouched. Bayou Rise Publishing's certified agreement was still there. So were Yvonne's trust papers and the old royalty statements. I counted the statement envelopes, then returned them in order. Before closing the box, I noticed something. The most recent quarterly statement should have arrived within weeks. Kimberly knew that. Stephen apparently knew it too. I locked the box and put the key back on my ring. Then I returned to the kitchen and placed the authorization form beneath Yvonne's coffee cup. I didn't call Kimberly. I didn't call Stephen. Not yet. I wanted to know whether my daughter was simply trying to help me, or whether someone had already decided I no longer belonged in charge of my own wife's music. The next morning, I made a list. Not a list of suspicions. I wasn't ready for that. I wrote down every account connected to the house: electricity, water, insurance, property tax, telephone, and the 2 bank accounts Yvonne and I used. Then I added Bayou Rise. I dated the page and put it in my desk. Yvonne used to say I could turn breakfast into an inventory. She wasn't wrong. I trusted lists because they showed what changed. They also showed what didn't. The authorization form stayed beneath her coffee cup. Kimberly returned 2 days later. She walked into the kitchen carrying a container of red beans. She saw the form immediately. "You found that," she said. "You left it." I meant to explain it. Go ahead. She set the container in the refrigerator, then removed it. There wasn't enough room. She began rearranging jars. "It's just a backup," she said. "You sign it, and I can help if something happens." "What might happen? You could get sick." "So could you." She shut the refrigerator harder than necessary. "Why are you being difficult?" "I'm asking what the form does. It lets me receive information. It says, manage recurring income. That doesn't mean I take anything." I didn't say it did. She looked at the paper. "Did you read the whole thing?" "Yes. I told Stephen we should have explained it first." That was another answer I hadn't asked for. I picked up the form. "Where did this come from?" "He found it online. It has an advisor's letterhead. He knows people." "Which advisor?" "I don't remember." The name at the top was More Financial Wellness Services. There was a telephone number, but no address. The footer said the form was for discussion purposes only. I folded it once. "I'm not signing this." Kimberly nodded too quickly. "Fine, take it with you. You can throw it away." "I'd rather you take it." She slipped the form into her purse. Then she put the red beans on the counter. "You'll need to clear space yourself." "I can manage that." "I know you can, Daddy." She kissed my cheek and left. I stood at the window as she walked to her car. She sat behind the wheel without starting it. A few seconds later, she took out her phone. I couldn't hear her, but I watched her talk. She looked toward the house twice. That was when I decided to stop giving every odd thing an innocent explanation. I didn't decide Kimberly was stealing from me. I didn't decide Stephen had some grand scheme. I simply decided I would know what crossed my desk. The first thing I checked was the mail. Our mail usually arrived between noon and 2. The carrier parked near the corner, then walked the last section of Milton Avenue. Yvonne could hear the truck before I did. "There's your paperwork," she'd say. She made the word sound like a disease. For the next week, I wrote down when the mail arrived. Most days it was advertising, medical notices, and sympathy cards from people who had heard late. On Thursday, there was an insurance envelope. On Friday, nothing came. The following Monday, Kimberly arrived at 11:45. She brought cleaning supplies and said she wanted to do the guest bathroom. "You cleaned it last week," I said. "It needed more work. Nobody's using it. That's when you clean things." She put on yellow rubber gloves. I was in the back room when I heard the mail slot. Our front door had an old brass slot Yvonne refused to replace. The mail fell onto a small rug inside. By the time I reached the hallway, Kimberly was holding it. "Anything interesting?" I asked. "Just junk?" She walked toward the kitchen while sorting the envelopes. "Let me see." She handed me 2 grocery advertisements and an electric bill. "Was that all?" "Yes." She went into the bathroom and turned on the faucet. I checked the front rug. Nothing remained there. The electric bill was already open. I found Kimberly scrubbing a sink that didn't need scrubbing. "You opened this." She looked over her shoulder. I thought it was mine for a second. "Your electric company mails bills to my house?" I wasn't paying attention. "You were sorting my mail." I was picking it up off the floor. She took off one glove. "Do you really think I'm reading your electric bill?" "I know you opened it. It was an accident." I watched her face. She looked offended. She also looked embarrassed. I said, "Leave the mail where it falls." "Fine. I mean all of it." I said fine. She pulled the glove back on and turned toward the sink. I went to the kitchen. I wrote the date on my list. That evening, Stephen called. He usually called me only when equipment failed. "How are you doing?" he asked. "Doing fine. Kim says you got upset over a bill." "I didn't get upset. She said you accused her of opening your mail." "She opened my mail." There was a pause. "She's trying, Leonard. So am I. This has been hard on her. I was at the hospital too. That's not what I meant." "What did you mean?" He sighed into the phone. "Look, she worries about you being alone. She can ask how I'm doing." "She does. She doesn't need to open an electric bill. It was one envelope." "That's correct. You're making it bigger. I'm making sure it stays one envelope." He became quiet. In the background, I heard a low hum. It sounded like the air system at his studio. Then he said, "Yvonne wouldn't want you shutting Kimberly out." I looked toward the blue sweater still hanging over the chair. "Don't use my wife to settle an argument. I'm not doing that. You just did." He lowered his voice. "We're family. There shouldn't be all this suspicion." "I didn't mention suspicion. You didn't have to." He ended the call soon afterward. I added his call to the list. The next day I drove to my old shop. I'd sold most of the equipment after retiring, but I still rented the back room. A few longtime customers brought me small repairs. I enjoyed the work, and it gave me somewhere to go. There was an amplifier waiting on the bench. Its owner had taped a note to the handle. Cuts out when warm. Please save her. I plugged it in and let it run. For 20 minutes, it worked perfectly. Then the sound crackled and disappeared. That was how failing parts behaved. They worked long enough to make you doubt the problem. I removed the back panel and found a darkened connection near the power section. The joint looked solid until I touched it. Then it shifted. I repaired it, tested the amplifier, and wrote the owner's name on a tag. My phone rang as I was cleaning the bench. It was Kimberly. "Are you at home?" she asked. "No." "Where are you?" "At the shop." "You're working?" "I'm repairing an amplifier." "You shouldn't be around that wiring alone." I looked at the unplugged amplifier. "I've done this for 40 years. That doesn't mean accidents can't happen." "Why did you ask if I was home?" She hesitated. "I was going to stop by the shop. I'm already near the house. Then we'll talk later." She said goodbye, though she sounded irritated. I left 10 minutes after that. When I reached Milton Avenue, Kimberly's car wasn't there. The mail had already arrived. 3 envelopes lay beneath the slot. One was addressed to Bayou Rise Publishing. I picked it up first. It came from a small licensing company in New Orleans. They wanted permission to use part of a song in a restaurant advertisement. The envelope had been bent, but it was sealed. I stood in the hallway reading the address twice. Bayou Rise mail had always come to Milton Avenue. Nothing about that was unusual. What bothered me was Kimberly asking where I was shortly before delivery. I put the envelope in my desk. Then I called Eugene. He answered on the 5th ring. "If this is about lunch, I already ate. It's 3 in the afternoon. I plan ahead. Can you come by tomorrow? Something broken?" "Maybe." He didn't ask what. "I'll be there at 10, he said. Eugene arrived at 9:40. Retired mail carriers apparently couldn't be late. I made coffee. He took his black and added enough sugar to concern me. I showed him the list. He read it without speaking. Then he turned back to the first page. "You keeping a mail log for now?" "Why?" I told him about the pamphlets, the form, and the electric bill. I also told him Kimberly had called before the mail arrived. Eugene stirred his coffee. "What do you want from me?" "Tell me if I'm imagining a pattern." "You're asking the wrong person." "Why? I didn't like Stephen before any of this." "You never said that." "You never asked." I leaned back. "What don't you like?" "He talks about musicians the way a car dealer talks about inventory." "That's not evidence." "I know." Eugene examined the licensing envelope. "Has anything gone missing?" "I don't know. That's the problem with missing mail. You can't see what isn't there. When should the next royalty statement arrive?" "You tell me, near the end of March." He pushed the list back. "Watch that." "I intend to." "Also call the senders. Don't wait for envelopes. I don't want to alert anyone yet. Then ask normal questions." He drank his coffee. "Did Kimberly ever have a key? To the house? To the mailbox, if there was one? But you've got a slot. She has a house key. Could she come in when you're gone?" "Yes." "Does she?" "I don't know." Eugene looked toward the hallway. "You need to know." I didn't like hearing that. Milton Avenue had been Kimberly's home once. She'd come through that door with scraped knees, school pictures, and later, a man she wanted us to meet. Telling myself to monitor her felt ugly. Eugene must have seen that on my face. "You don't have to call her a thief," he said. "Just pay attention. That's what I'm doing. Then don't feel guilty for doing it." Before he left, he checked the brass mail slot. He opened it, closed it, and examined the screws. "This isn't how they'd redirect business mail," he said. "How would they? Address change, mail hold, forwarding request, or somebody simply picks it up. Could Kimberly change my mailing address? She could request it. Whether it gets accepted is another matter. How would I find out? Go to the post office with identification. Ask whether any active forwarding order exists. I went that afternoon. The clerk checked my address and said there was no permanent forwarding order. There was no vacation hold either. Could mail be forwarded under a business name? I asked. She checked Bayou Rise Publishing. No active forwarding, she said. That should have reassured me. It didn't. It only removed one possibility. When I returned home, I put a small piece of clear tape along the top corner of the front door. It was nearly invisible. If someone entered while I was gone, the tape would pull loose. I felt ridiculous doing it. The next morning, it was still in place. So was the next. On Saturday, Kimberly used her key without knocking. I heard the tape separate as the door opened. Daddy, in the kitchen. She entered carrying another folder. This one was green. I brought copies of Mom's memorial expenses, put them on the table. She did, then noticed me looking toward the hallway. What? Nothing. She sat down. We should go through her personal accounts. Diane is handling the trust paperwork. I know, but I'm successor trustee. You'll receive instructions. I already have the document. From Diane? Mom gave me a copy years ago. That was plausible. Yvonne had named Kimberly to manage her personal assets after death. I knew that much. Kimberly opened the green folder. There are things we can simplify, such as closing small accounts, combining deposits, making one place for income. What income? Anything still coming in under Mom's name? The royalties don't come in under her personal name. She looked down at the folder. Right. I know. Her answer came too quickly. I waited, but she didn't add anything. Then she pulled out a sheet of paper showing memorial expenses, flowers, hall rental, food, printing, sound equipment. One charge stood out. Bayou Sound Studio had billed $2,000 for audio services. I tapped the line. Stephen charged for the memorial. It was equipment rental. He owns the equipment. He still has expenses. He offered to handle the sound. He spent 2 days preparing. Did you pay this? Not yet. Good. Her face reddened. This isn't about the money. Then remove the charge. That's his business rate. I didn't hire his business. He was trying to make the service beautiful. It was beautiful. It was also his mother-in-law's memorial. She closed the folder. I'll talk to him. Did he prepare this expense sheet? We did it together. That explained the language. Legacy materials, brand preservation, catalog presentation. Nobody in our family spoke that way. Kimberly stood to leave. Are you coming Sunday? Where? Our house. Dinner. You didn't invite me. I'm inviting you now. Is Stephen billing for that too? I shouldn't have said it. Her face changed. Mom wouldn't recognize you right now. She picked up the green folder and walked out. I remained in the kitchen, ashamed of the remark, but not the question behind it. After she left, I checked the front door. The tape had fallen onto the rug. I picked it up and threw it away. I didn't need it anymore. Kimberly was entering the house whenever she pleased. She was sorting papers, asking about income, and carrying information back to Stephen. The issue wasn't whether she had access. It was what she did with it. Near the end of March, I began checking the mail twice daily. The quarterly royalty distribution was usually around $22,000. The statement normally arrived before the deposit cleared. The expected week came. Monday brought a water bill. Tuesday brought an advertisement for hearing aids. Wednesday brought nothing. On Thursday, Kimberly appeared shortly after noon. She didn't call first. I was in the garage sorting tools. Through the side window, I saw her walk toward the front door. She stopped when the mail carrier reached the house. They spoke for less than a minute. The carrier handed her the stack. Kimberly entered using her key. I stayed in the garage. I heard her moving through the house. A cabinet opened, then a drawer. When I came inside, she was standing at the kitchen counter. You should have told me you were here, she said. I live here. I meant in the garage. What came in the mail? She pointed to the table. There were 2 advertisements and a pharmacy notice. Was that all? Yes. I looked at her purse. It was larger than usual and zipped closed. She followed my eyes. You're doing it again? Doing what? Looking at me like I've done something? What did you put in the drawer? A pen. Which drawer? She stared at me. Then she opened the drawer beside the sink. A ballpoint pen lay on top of the dish towels. I picked it up. It belonged to Bayou Sound Studio. The studio telephone number was printed on the side. Kimberly folded her arms. Are we finished? I didn't start anything. You don't have to. You make everything feel like an accusation. She grabbed her purse. Stephen was right. You're getting fixated. On what? Paper, mail, forms, tiny details. Tiny details are usually where problems begin. She shook her head. I can't do this today. After she left, I checked the trash, the drawers, and the counters. I found nothing. The royalty statement didn't arrive Friday. It didn't arrive the following Monday either. On Tuesday morning, I called the royalty administrator's regular service number. A woman asked for my account information and security answer. I'm checking whether the quarterly statement has been mailed, I said. Yes, sir. It went out last week. To Milton Avenue? She read the address back to me. It was correct. Has anyone requested electronic delivery? I can't discuss account changes through this line. I'm the managing contact. I understand, sir. Changes are reviewed by another department. What changes? There was a pause. I'm only saying that department handles those questions. I wrote down her name, the time, and the exact words. Then I called Eugene. The statement was mailed, I said. It never reached me. Are you sure it didn't arrive? No. You mean, you're sure it didn't reach you? I looked at the kitchen drawer where Kimberly had placed the pen. Yes, I said. That's exactly what I mean. Eugene came over that afternoon. We stood beside the front window while the carrier approached. He watched the route, the bag, and the order of delivery. When the mail came through the slot, Eugene picked it up by the edges. 3 pieces, he said. He read each name aloud and handed them to me. Then he looked at my written log. If somebody's taking things, they know what to look for. Business envelopes, or a return address. I put the mail on the table. Can you help me prove it? He thought for a moment. I can help you observe it. That's enough for now. He nodded. That was my first deliberate answer to what they were doing. I wouldn't argue with Kimberly. I wouldn't warn Stephen. I would keep dates, names, and copies. If something disappeared, I would know when it was sent and who had access. That evening, Kimberly called. Her voice was unusually soft. Daddy, I'm sorry about earlier. So am I. I think we're both under strain. Maybe. Stephen found someone who helps families with this. With what? Grief, finances, adjustment, all of it. I already have a doctor. He's not a doctor, he's a consultant. I looked at the discarded authorization form's telephone number in my notebook. What's his name? Alan Moore. I didn't respond. Kimberly continued. He'll stop by in April. It's just a conversation. Did you make an appointment for me? No, nothing formal. When is he coming? Next Thursday morning. She said it like the decision had already been made. I wrote the date beneath the missing royalty statement. The following Thursday, I woke before 6. I cleaned the kitchen, though it was already clean. Then I moved Yvonne's cup into the cabinet. I didn't want Alan Moore asking why I kept an empty cup beside the coffee maker. At 8, Eugene called. You want company? I can handle a consultant. That wasn't my question. I'll call you afterward. Write down what he asks. I was planning to. Don't leave your notebook where they can see it. I looked at the notebook beside my elbow. Retirement made you suspicious. Delivering mail made me suspicious. He hung up. Alan was supposed to arrive at 10. Kimberly came at 9:15. She carried a bakery box and a folder. What's in the folder? I asked. Information for Alan. About me, household things. Nothing private. Then show me. She held it against her chest. Can we please have one calm morning? I'm calm. You know what I mean? No, I don't. She placed the bakery box on the counter. Inside were 4 pecan pastries. I hadn't eaten one in years. Alan likes to make visits comfortable, she said. So he sent pastries. Stephen picked them up. Is Stephen coming? She straightened the paper napkins. He might. That hadn't been mentioned. I poured coffee into my own cup. Kimberly watched me add 1 spoonful of sugar. You're eating enough, right? Yes. What did you have yesterday? Food. I'm serious. So am I. Can you give me one answer without making a joke? I had oatmeal in the morning, a sandwich at the shop, chicken for dinner. What kind of chicken? I set the spoon down. Why does that matter? She looked toward the folder. Alan asks about routines. Did he tell you to ask me first? He said, background helps. Then he can ask me. She sat at the kitchen table. Daddy, if you treat him like an enemy, this won't help. I haven't met him, but you've already decided. I decided I don't need a stranger reviewing my breakfast. Her eyes dropped to Yvonne's folded lyric page near my hand. What's that? Something your mother wrote. Can I see it? No. She looked hurt. I put the page in my shirt pocket. At 9:55, a gray sedan parked in front. Alan Moore stepped out carrying a narrow leather case. He was 54, though I learned that later. He wore tan pants, a pale blue shirt, and shoes polished enough for church. He stood on the porch until Kimberly opened the door. Mr. Shaw, he said, I appreciate you seeing me. I didn't arrange the visit. His smile remained in place. Well, I appreciate your flexibility. Kimberly introduced us as if we were at a business lunch. Alan held my hand with both of his. "How are you holding up?" "I'm standing," he laughed. "Good, humor is healthy." He said it while writing something on a small pad. I noticed that immediately. We sat in the living room. Alan chose Yvonne's chair before I could stop him. Kimberly sat on the couch. I took the wooden chair near the window. Alan opened his case. "I want to be clear," he said. "I'm not here to sell anything." "What do you do?" "I help older adults maintain financial confidence during transitions." "That sounds like something people pay for. Sometimes families retain me." "Who retained you?" Kimberly shifted on the couch. Alan glanced at her. "Today is an introductory visit." That didn't answer me. Stephen covered my initial consultation. There it was. I looked at Kimberly. She said, "It was his idea, but I agreed. How much did he pay?" Alan lifted one hand. "Financial arrangements aren't important today. They're important to me." "Of course." He made another note. I watched the pen move. "What did you write?" "Just that you value transparency." "That isn't what you were thinking." His smile weakened. "I record observations. That's all?" "What observations did Stephen hire you to make?" "Leonard," Kimberly said. Alan leaned forward. "May I call you Leonard? You already did." He sat back. "This works best when nobody feels tested." "What works best?" "The conversation. Then let's have one." For the next few minutes, his questions sounded ordinary. How had I been sleeping? Was I cooking? Did I have friends nearby? Was I driving regularly? I answered without trouble. I told him about Eugene. I mentioned the amplifier repair. I explained that I shopped on Tuesday mornings because the store was quieter. Then his questions changed. "What month are we in?" I looked at him. "April? And the year?" "You know the year. It helps me understand orientation. You said this wasn't a test. It isn't." Kimberly clasped her hands. "Just answer him, Daddy." "It's 2026. Alan nodded and wrote. "Do you know today's date?" "The 9th. "What day of the week?" "Thursday." "Can you tell me where we are?" "In my living room." "The address?" I gave it to him. He wrote again. I said, "How does my address help with financial confidence?" "It establishes comfort with personal information." "Does Stephen know you asked these questions?" "Your son-in-law wants to ensure you're supported." I looked at Kimberly. She avoided my eyes. Alan removed a printed sheet from his case. "Let's try something simple." He placed the sheet on the coffee table. It showed a blank circle. "Imagine that's a clock. I know what a clock looks like. Please place the numbers around it." "No." His pen stopped. "Is there a reason?" "Yes." "You misrepresented this visit." "I'm not evaluating medical capacity." "What are you evaluating?" "Daily function." "For whom?" "For you and your family." "I didn't hire you." Kimberly leaned toward me. "Daddy, it's a drawing. It's an assessment. It doesn't mean anything." "Then why does he need it?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Alan returned the sheet to his case. "We can skip that." "What happens to your notes?" "They remain confidential." "Confidential from whom?" "Outside parties." "Does Stephen receive them?" "He receives general recommendations." "Does Kimberly?" "With your consent." "I haven't consented." He looked at the folder beside her. "Your daughter indicated the family was cooperating." "My daughter doesn't give consent for me." The room went still. Kimberly's face turned pale. Alan closed his pad. "Perhaps we started badly. You started by saying I wasn't being tested. You aren't. Then give me your notes. They're my work product. Your work product about me. I can provide a summary after our process." "There is no process." He glanced toward Kimberly again. I followed his eyes. That was the part I couldn't ignore. Every time I asked who wanted something, he looked at her. Every time I asked who paid, the answer was Stephen. Alan placed both hands on his knees. "Would you be willing to discuss your financial responsibilities?" "No account numbers. I wouldn't request those." "What do you want to know?" "Whether you manage regular bills?" "Yes." "Do you ever pay them late?" "No." "Have you made unusual purchases since your wife's passing?" "No." "Have you given money to anyone outside the family?" "No." "Are you receiving all expected income?" That question was different. Kimberly looked at him quickly. I kept my face still. "What expected income? Pensions, investments, royalties?" "Who told you about royalties?" He checked his notes. Your family mentioned your wife had a music career. That doesn't answer me. Kimberly stood. I'm getting coffee. Nobody asked for coffee. She went into the kitchen. Alan lowered his voice. Your daughter is worried. About the royalty income? About the complexity? Did she tell you a statement was missing? His expression didn't change. His fingers tightened around the pen. I don't recall that specific detail. I hadn't told Kimberly the statement was missing. I stood up. I think we're finished. Leonard, I'd encourage you not to see support as a threat. I'd encourage you to leave. Kimberly returned with an empty hand. What happened? Mr. Moore is leaving. Alan remained seated. I'd like 5 minutes with all three of us. Stephen isn't here. He's on his way. I looked at Kimberly. You told me he might come. He had a studio appointment. Then why is he on his way? Alan placed his papers into the leather case. This kind of transition often works better when the family presents a united approach. To what? Reducing your administrative burden. I haven't asked anyone to reduce it. You may not recognize how much stress you're carrying. I walked to the front door and opened it. Alan stood slowly. He offered me a business card. I took it because I wanted the information. The card gave the same telephone number as the authorization form. Under his name, it listed several phrases: family transition planning, financial wellness coaching, aging support coordination. There was no professional license. What are your qualifications? I asked. I've worked with families for over 20 years. That isn't a qualification. I'm certified through several private programs. Which ones? They're listed on my website. I turned the card over. There was no website. Alan placed his case beneath his arm. I can see you're frustrated. I'm paying attention. He looked directly at me then. Something changed in his face. The warmth disappeared. Those aren't always the same thing, he said. Kimberly followed him to the porch. I'm sorry, she whispered. I couldn't tell whether she meant Alan or me. He left at 10:43. Kimberly remained outside until his car turned the corner. Then she came back into the living room and shut the door. You embarrassed him. He came into my house under false pretenses. He was trying to help. He asked me to draw a clock. It's standard. Standard for what? She picked up the untouched pastry box. I don't know. Yes, you do. No, Daddy, I don't. Stephen said Alan helps families get organized. Did Stephen tell him about the royalties? We mentioned Mom's career. Did you tell him my statement was missing? Her eyes moved toward me. What statement? The quarterly statement. I didn't know it was missing. Alan had known enough to ask whether all expected income arrived. That still wasn't proof. He could have asked every client that question. I said, when did you last speak to anyone about Bayou Rise? I haven't. Anyone at a bank? No. Anyone who handles royalties? No. Her answers were clean and immediate. I watched her zip the bakery box into its plastic bag. Why did you bring him? I wanted somebody neutral. He was hired by Stephen. That doesn't mean he's against you. Was I supposed to sign something today? She didn't answer. Kimberly. He had recommendations. What recommendations? A family authorization, maybe account monitoring, the form you already left here. It would let me help without asking every time. I don't need account monitoring. You don't know that. The words came out before she seemed ready. I felt my shoulders settle. Explain that. She rubbed her forehead. You're missing mail. You're keeping lists. You're accusing me over a pen. You knew I was keeping lists? She dropped her hand. I saw the notebook. When? I don't remember. It hasn't left my desk. You leave things around. No, I don't. She looked toward the hallway. I understood then that she had entered my desk. Maybe while cleaning, maybe while I was at the shop. Did you open the desk drawer? I was looking for stamps. There are stamps in the kitchen. I didn't know that. You grew up in this house. That was a long time ago. I walked past her and opened the desk. My notebook lay where I'd left it. The pencil beside it pointed in the opposite direction. That meant nothing to anyone else. It meant something to me. I opened the lower drawer. The old royalty statements were there. The licensing envelope was there. One item was missing. The blue household folder. I returned to the living room. Where's the blue folder? Kimberly stared at me. I took it. When? A few days ago? Why? I made it. It contained my account list. You wrote account names, not numbers. You read it. I was checking whether you'd use the information. Then you gave it to Alan. No. To Stephen? She pressed her lips together. I repeated the question. He looked at it. The front door opened before I responded. Stephen entered without knocking. He'd used Kimberly's key. "What happened?" he asked. Kimberly turned away from me. Alan left. Stephen looked at the empty chair, then at the open desk. "You threw him out?" "I asked him to leave. He cleared his morning for you." "I didn't ask for his morning." Stephen removed his sunglasses. "This is exactly the concern." "What concern?" "You're becoming hostile whenever anybody offers help. You hired a man to test my memory. He isn't a doctor." "I noticed. He provides documentation." The words sat between us. "Documentation for what?" I asked. Stephen glanced at Kimberly. She shook her head slightly. He put the sunglasses into his pocket. "Documentation that we are trying to support you." "Who requires that?" "Nobody requires it." "Then why document it?" He took a breath. "In case decisions need to be made later." "What decisions?" "Financial decisions, housing, medical care, whatever comes. I own this house. Nobody said you don't. I pay my bills. For now." Kimberly turned toward him. "Stephen." He ignored her. "Things can change quickly at your age," he said. "We'd be irresponsible if we didn't prepare." I stepped closer. "I'm 71, not unconscious." "That's not what I said. You entered my house with my daughter's key. You paid a stranger to question my capacity. Now you're telling me this creates documentation." Stephen's face hardened. "You're twisting everything." "No." I'm listening carefully. Kimberly started crying. Neither of us moved toward her. She covered her mouth, then went into the kitchen. Stephen watched her leave. "You see what you're doing to her? I see what you brought into my house. I'm trying to protect my wife. So am I." "From what?" I looked toward the kitchen, from having to choose between us. That quieted him. For a few seconds, I thought he might say something honest. Instead, he took Kimberly's purse from the couch. "We'll give you some space. You'll return her key." He looked at me. "It's Kimberly's key. It opens my house." He carried the purse into the kitchen. Their voices stayed low. Then Kimberly came out with red eyes. She removed a brass key from her ring. Her hands shook as she placed it on the table. "I can't believe you're doing this," she said. "I didn't bring Alan here. He was trying to help you. I hope you believe that." She stared at me. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I hope you know what Stephen is asking you to do." Stephen stepped between us. "That's enough." I looked around him. "If you want the blue folder returned, bring it yourself." Kimberly nodded once. They left together. I locked the door behind them. Then I called Alan's number. His voicemail answered. I listened to the full greeting and wrote down his business name exactly. Next, I searched the state's professional licensing records. Alan Moore wasn't listed as a financial advisor, social worker, counselor, accountant, or medical professional. I printed the search results. After that, I called my regular physician's office. The receptionist offered me an appointment the following week. "What's the reason for the visit?" she asked. "I want my memory and decision-making evaluated." "Are you having symptoms?" "No." She paused. "Then why do you need an evaluation?" "Because somebody else has started keeping notes." When I finished that call, I took out the missing royalty statement log. I placed Alan's card beside it. Then I added the authorization form's letterhead and Stephen's exact word: documentation. The problem was wider than mail now. I put everything into a plain envelope and drove to Diane's office. Her receptionist told me she was between appointments. "I can wait." "You may be here a while. That's fine." I sat beside a table covered with outdated magazines. Through the wall, I could hear Diane speaking in her conference room. Her voice remained calm, even when another voice grew louder. 20 minutes later, a man in a dark suit came out. He looked irritated. Diane followed him to the door. "Read the last paragraph again," she told him. He left without answering. Then she saw me. "You look like you brought homework. I brought a problem." She led me into her office and closed the door. Diane's desk had looked the same since 2004. There were stacks of folders on both corners. A brass lamp leaned slightly to the left. Yvonne used to threaten to straighten it every time we visited. Diane sat down and held out her hand. I gave her the envelope. She read my mail log first. Then she examined Alan's card and the printed license searches. She read the financial authorization form twice. "Did you sign anything?" she asked. "No." "Did you give Kimberly access to any accounts?" "No." Does she have your social security number? Probably. She's handled hospital forms. Copies of your identification? She may have copies from the funeral arrangements. What about Bayou Rise records? She saw my list. It contained the company name, not account details. Diane turned Alan's card over. Who hired him? Stephen. Annie described the visit as, what? Financial wellness. What did he actually do? I described the questions. I told her about the date, address, clock drawing, and his notes. When I repeated Stephen's word, documentation, she stopped writing. Exactly what did he say? He said Alan provides documentation. Documentation for whom? He wouldn't answer. Diane removed her glasses. Did anyone use the words capacity, competency, guardian, curator, or interdiction? No. In Louisiana, interdiction is the court process people use when they claim an adult can't manage personal or financial affairs. I knew the word, but I hadn't thought it belonged anywhere near me. Why are you asking that? I said. Because the clock drawing wasn't financial planning. I know. It also wasn't a valid medical evaluation. I know that too. She tapped Alan's card. But a family could attach his observations to something else. A doctor's note, statements from relatives, examples of supposed confusion. I'm not confused. That may not be the point. She put her glasses back on. You said a royalty statement is missing? It was mailed last week. Was the distribution deposited? I haven't checked today. Check now. I opened the banking application on my phone. The Bayou Rise account showed the regular balance. No quarterly payment had posted. Diane checked the calendar. It may still be processing. The statement should have arrived. Yes. She reached for her telephone. Let's ask the administrator whether anyone has contacted them. The first person who answered wouldn't discuss account activity with Diane. She gave my account number, her attorney identification, and the authorization already on file. Then we waited. The hold music was an accordion version of a song Yvonne used to sing. Diane looked at me. Is that hers? No, she hated that one. Good. I was about to complain. A second representative came on. She asked me several security questions. Then she requested permission to speak with Diane. You have it, I said. Diane asked whether the payment schedule had changed. The representative said it hadn't. Has the mailing address changed? No. Has anyone requested a change? The representative paused. I need to review the contact history. We went back on hold. Diane picked up a pencil and wrote one word. Requested? She turned the paper toward me. I nodded. The representative returned. There appears to be an open inquiry, she said. What kind of inquiry? Diane asked. A payee designation review. I leaned closer to the phone. Who opened it? I'm limited in what I can disclose until the review team verifies authority. I'm the person currently authorized. Yes, Mr. Shaw. The inquiry doesn't show a completed change. Who submitted it? Another pause followed. The requester identified herself as a successor trustee. Diane's eyes narrowed. What name did she provide? I can't release that through general service. There's only one successor trustee, I said. Diane lifted a finger, telling me to wait. She asked for the review department's direct number and a reference code. The representative provided both. When was the inquiry opened? Diane asked. Today at 1:56 in the afternoon. I checked the clock on the wall. It was 3:20. Kimberly and Stephen had left my house shortly before noon. Diane thanked the representative and ended the call. Neither of us spoke immediately. Finally, I said, she told me she hadn't contacted them. This inquiry was submitted after you asked her. She left my house, then did it. That appears possible. We need confirmation. She used the trust. She claimed authority through the trust. Those aren't the same thing. Diane stood and walked to a tall filing cabinet. She unlocked the second drawer and removed two thick files. One was labeled with Yvonne's legal name. The other was marked Bayou Rise Publishing. She placed both on the desk. Before we go further, tell me what you believe Kimberly controls. Yvonne named her successor trustee. Over what? Her personal assets. Correct. What about her songs? Diane opened the Bayou Rise file. The copyrights are owned by the company. I knew we'd place them there. I hadn't thought about the distinction in years. Statements arrived, checks posted. I maintained the records. Nothing had forced me to examine the arrangement. Diane pulled out the old operating agreement. Yvonne's trust and Bayou Rise are separate, she said. Kimberly's authority over trust property doesn't automatically give her authority over company property. So, she can't redirect the royalties, not by waving the trust around. Could the administrator believe she can? If someone sees Yvonne's name, a death certificate, and a trust naming Kimberly, they might begin a review. That's why we're going to make the record clear. She turned to the signature pages. Mine was there. Yvonne's was beneath it. Diane had signed as witness. I remembered that afternoon. Rain against the windows. Yvonne tapping her pen. Her asking whether the papers meant I had to handle everything. Diane continued reading. Has Kimberly asked for this agreement? Not directly. Has she been inside your lockbox? I don't think so. Check the certified copy when you get home. I checked it before. It was there. Check again. She copied the inquiry reference number onto a legal pad. I'm calling the review department. You should hear the whole conversation. The next call lasted nearly 40 minutes. We spoke to a man who asked me to verify information from 3 previous statements. I kept copies in my desk, but Diane also had annual records in her file. I gave him the dates and amounts. Once he verified me, Diane asked for the requester's identity. The answer was Kimberly Barrett. I stared at Yvonne's signature on the old agreement. Did she request the funds personally? Diane asked. She requested that future payments be held during a payee review. Held where? A destination account has been proposed. Under what name? He said he couldn't provide the bank number. He could provide the account title. The Yvonne LeBlanc Legacy Fund. I closed my eyes. There was the word again. Not just something Stephen said at a memorial, not just language in an expense sheet. They had used it to name an account. When was that account opened? Diane asked. The submitted letter is dated yesterday. Who signed the letter? Kimberly Barrett. Anyone else? The accompanying contact sheet lists Stephen Barrett. I opened my eyes. Diane was watching me. The review officer explained that no final approval had been entered. The quarterly distribution was temporarily delayed while the documents were examined. Do not change anything, I said. We'll need written instructions. You'll have them. Diane asked him to place a note on the account. The current managing contact disputed every requested change. No funds were to leave until authority was verified. He read the note back to us. After the call ended, Diane closed the trust file. You were right to come here. I wanted to be wrong, I know. She looked me in the face and said she hadn't called. Maybe Stephen prepared the submission. Her name is on it. Yes. Her signature too. Yes. I got up and walked to the window. Cars moved slowly along the street. A delivery truck blocked half the lane. 2 people stood outside a restaurant looking at a menu. Everything outside continued normally. Behind me, Diane opened another folder. I'm going to prepare a notarized letter, she said. What will it say? That Bayou Rise disputes the proposed change. It will restate who currently holds authority to direct payments. Can you send it today? I can draft it today. You'll sign before a notary tomorrow morning. I'll come back. Bring your certified copy. I turned from the window. Why would Kimberly do this? That's not a legal question. I'm asking you. Diane took off her glasses again. Best case, she believes the trust gives her responsibility for everything connected to Yvonne. And the worst case, she knows it doesn't. I sat down. Stephen needs that catalog. Needs it for what? I don't know. Then don't assume. Find facts. I nodded. That was why I trusted Diane. She didn't turn suspicion into certainty. She made it wait for evidence. She handed me a copy of the inquiry notes. Do not confront them tonight. I wasn't planning to. If they know we've disputed the request, they may change tactics. They already changed tactics. First it was pamphlets, then the mail, then Alan, and now we know those things may connect. That was the discovery that changed my position. I'd thought Kimberly was pushing herself into my affairs because she didn't trust me alone. I'd thought Stephen was using her grief to gain influence. Both were bad enough, but they weren't merely preparing for a future problem. They had already opened an account in Yvonne's professional name. They had already asked for the income to be redirected. Alan's visit had happened the same morning Kimberly submitted the request. I looked at the copy of her signed statement. It said she was acting to protect her mother's musical legacy from disruption caused by the declining administrative reliability of the surviving spouse. She hadn't used my name. She had reduced me to a description. I read the sentence again. Can she use this against me elsewhere? She can try. How? The trust, banks, a court petition, anywhere she claims financial risk. Based on Alan's notes? Possibly. I called my doctor. Good. The appointment is next week. Keep it. Tell the doctor exactly why you requested it. She returned the files to the cabinet. Also, speak to Eugene. If he observed anything about the mail, get it written down while the dates are fresh. He hasn't seen Kimberly take a specific statement. He can describe what he did see. Don't improve it. I won't. Diane began drafting the letter while I sat across from her. She read each paragraph aloud. The wording was simple. Bayou Rise owned the catalog. The trust did not authorize payment changes. Any request submitted without proper company authority was disputed. She didn't include accusations. At 4:30, she printed the draft. Read it tonight, she said. We'll notarize it tomorrow. I took the letter home. The brass key Kimberly had returned still lay on the kitchen table. I placed it in the desk beside the mail log. Then I opened the bedroom lockbox. The certified operating agreement remained inside. So did the trust papers. Nothing looked disturbed. I removed both documents and carried them to the kitchen. For the first time since Yvonne died, I read them side by side. The trust named Kimberly. The company agreement named me. They weren't contradictory. They controlled different things. At 7:15, my phone rang. Kimberly's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. Daddy, she said, did you call the royalty office today? Yes. Her breathing changed. Why would you do that? Because my statement disappeared. I was trying to prevent a delay. You requested a hold. Only until things were organized. You opened a new account. It's for Mom. Your mother is dead. The words came out colder than I intended. Kimberly became silent. Then she said, I know that. Do you? She began crying softly. Stephen said the trust made me responsible. Did Diane say that? No. Did you ask her? Stephen had somebody review it. Who? I don't know his name. You signed the request. I was trying to protect everything. From me? She didn't answer. Your statement says my reliability is declining. That was language they gave us. You signed it. I didn't know they'd send it today. Who is they? Another silence. Then I heard Stephen in the background. Hang up, he said. Kimberly whispered something to him. I said, put Stephen on the phone. The line went dead. I set the phone beside Yvonne's cup. The next morning, I signed Diane's letter before a notary. Diane sent it by certified mail and secure electronic delivery. The administrator acknowledged receiving it before noon. That afternoon, I sat in my doctor's office and completed every test he requested. I answered questions, repeated words, drew the clock, reviewed my medications, and discussed my finances. This time, I knew who was evaluating me and why. When he finished, he placed his pen on the desk. Leonard, I see no evidence that you lack capacity. I need that in my medical record. It will be. I also need a written copy. He studied me for a moment. Is someone trying to take control of your affairs? They've started using the word declining. He nodded slowly. I'll make the report specific. I left with a follow-up appointment and a signed summary. Then I met Eugene at the shop. He read the statement Diane had prepared for him. It described the missing business mail, Kimberly collecting mail at the house, and our efforts to confirm delivery dates. Every word accurate? I asked. Yes. He signed it. I placed his statement, the doctor's summary, and Diane's notarized letter into one folder. For years, papers had been something I handled so Yvonne wouldn't have to. Now they were the only things standing between my daughter's signature and everything my wife had built. I kept that folder with me. It went to the shop. It sat on the passenger seat during lunch. At night, I locked it beside the operating agreement. Kimberly didn't call for 8 days. Stephen called twice, but he left no message. In early May, the quarterly deposit finally appeared. It was smaller than expected. I logged into the account and compared it with the prior statement. $11,000 had arrived. The quarterly distribution was normally close to $22,000. I called Diane before calling the administrator. Half the payment is missing, I said. Send me the account page. She called back 20 minutes later. The administrator released the undisputed portion to Bayou Rise. What happened to the rest? They processed it through the proposed legacy fund account. After receiving our letter, the review department says the transfer was already in motion. They told us no change was complete. I reminded them. Where is the money now? In an account controlled by Kimberly. I looked at the figure on my screen. That's theft. It's an unauthorized transfer. Let's use language we can prove. Can they reverse it? Yes, but their internal department wants additional documentation. What else could they need? A certified company record and another identity verification. They already have both. I know. Her voice stayed calm. That helped. Do not contact Kimberly yet, she said. I'm demanding a transaction trace. How long? They promised 48 hours. I'm tired of promises. So am I. The following afternoon, Diane asked me to come in. She had the transaction record on her desk. The $11,000 had moved into the Yvonne LeBlanc Legacy Fund at a local bank. The account listed Kimberly as trustee. Stephen was listed as an authorized contact. Can he withdraw money? I asked. The trace doesn't show signing authority. That isn't what I asked. I don't know yet. She slid another paper toward me. One of my associates found this while checking filings connected to Alan Moore. It was a notice prepared for a proposed interdiction petition. It hadn't been filed with the court. A law office had requested copies of property and lien records connected to me. The request listed Kimberly as the prospective petitioner. She's trying to have me declared incompetent. She may be preparing to. After my doctor's report, they probably didn't know you had one. I read the page twice. It requested information about the Milton Avenue house, Bayou Rise, and my bank relationships. Why would they search liens? To describe the property they believe needs protection. Protection from me. That would be their argument. I placed the page beside the transaction trace. The same week Kimberly moved the money, somebody began preparing to remove my authority over the rest. Diane pointed to the requesting law office. Do you know them? No. They handle general family matters. They may not know the complete story. Should you call them? Not yet. If a petition gets filed, they'll receive the physician's evaluation immediately. What if Kimberly signs it first, then she signs it knowing what it says? That sentence stayed with me. 2 days later, the $11,000 remained in the legacy fund. The bank had frozen withdrawals after Diane sent notice of the dispute. Kimberly called that evening. Daddy, the bank locked Mom's account. It isn't your mother's account. It has her name. You opened it after she died, for her music, with money taken from Bayou Rise. It was one payment, half of one payment. It was supposed to simplify things. For whom? She became quiet. Then she said, Can we meet as a family? Where? Our house. When? Sunday dinner. Will Stephen be there? Of course. Will Alan? No. Any attorneys? No, Daddy, just us. I agreed. Before Sunday, Diane received the Legacy Fund's account opening documents. Kimberly had signed everything. One page described the account's purpose: preservation, restoration, and promotion of the Yvonne LeBlanc catalog. Another page projected income from reissues, performance rights, and sync licenses. Those estimates came from Bayou Sound Studio. They're treating the catalog like a business plan, I said. They need control before any of this works, Diane replied. Why the rush? That's what we still don't know. Sunday evening I arrived at 6. Kimberly had cooked roast, rice, and green beans. Stephen opened a bottle of wine. He offered me a glass. I'm driving. One glass won't hurt. I said no. He poured one for himself. Dinner began with ordinary conversation. Kimberly asked about the shop. Stephen complained about a contractor. Nobody mentioned the missing money. After we ate, Kimberly cleared the plates. Stephen brought a folder to the table. It was black and had Bayou Sound Studios logo on the front. I put together a practical solution, he said. I thought this was a family dinner. It is. He opened the folder. The first page was titled Management Transition for Bayou Rise Publishing. My name appeared under a section labeled Retiring Manager. Kimberly's appeared under Incoming Manager. You've done enough, she said quietly. Let me handle the day-to-day part. What day-to-day part? Statements, licensing, deposits, the things you've already been trying to take. Stephen leaned forward. Nobody is taking anything. $11,000 says otherwise. That money is still protected. In an account you opened. Kimberly opened it. I looked at her. She kept her eyes on the table. Stephen continued. The administrator created the confusion. This agreement fixes it. I turned the page. It transferred management authority to Kimberly. It also allowed her to appoint service providers for licensing and catalog development. Bayou Sound Studio was named as the preferred provider. What does preferred mean? I asked. It means we keep the work in the family. What work? Remastering, reissues, sync preparation. Who asked for that work? The market is there. What market? He opened another section showing projected revenue. Commercial placements, streaming releases, a tribute album. The numbers were optimistic. Some were foolish. You expect this catalog to earn over $100,000 by next summer? With proper management, it earns about $22,000 a quarter. That's passive income. I'm talking about growth. What does growth cost? We invest the first distributions. Into your studio? Into Mom's music, Kimberly said. Stephen nodded. Exactly. I closed the folder. When did this become urgent? It isn't urgent, he said. Then I'll consider it next year. His hand flattened against the table. That doesn't make sense. Why not? We have opportunities now. Which opportunities expire? Interest changes. Artists move on. Be specific. He looked toward Kimberly. She whispered, "Tell him." Stephen's face tightened. There are business considerations. What business considerations? Studio scheduling, equipment commitments, financing. There it was. What financing? He stood and carried his wineglass to the counter. This is why we needed a calm conversation. I'm calm. You're looking for a trap in every sentence. I'm looking for an answer. Kimberly began folding her napkin. Stephen's loan is being reviewed. He turned sharply. Kim. What loan? I asked. The studio expansion loan, she said. Stephen set down his glass. That isn't relevant. If it isn't relevant, why hide it? I'm not hiding anything. When is the payment due? He didn't answer. Kimberly looked exhausted. August, she said. How much? Daddy, please. How much? Stephen came back to the table. The studio is worth more than the balance. That wasn't my question. It's a balloon payment. Businesses use them every day. How much? He stared at me. $95,000. The projected legacy fund income suddenly looked different. 4 royalty quarters would bring close to $88,000. Add the $11,000 already moved, and the total came near $99,000. Enough to meet his balloon payment. I tapped the management agreement. You plan to use Bayou Rise income for your loan? No. You plan to invest the distributions into your studio for catalog work. Then your studio uses that money to pay its lender. That's how revenue works. That isn't Bayou Rise revenue. It's Bayou Rise spending. Kimberly said, the studio wouldn't keep all of it. How much would it keep? She looked at Stephen. He answered for her. We'd negotiate a fair services agreement. After I transferred control. Yes. And if I refused? His expression changed. Only slightly, but I saw it. We'd have to make sure the catalog was protected. Through interdiction, Kimberly dropped the napkin. What? Stephen didn't move. I watched her face. You didn't know about the petition? What petition? She turned to her husband. Stephen? He sat down slowly. It was only a consultation. You said Alan was the consultation. He was. What did you give an attorney? Nothing final. Did you put my name on a court petition? I asked. It hasn't been filed. Kimberly pushed away from the table. You told me the lawyer was reviewing trust language. He was. You never said anything about court. Stephen rubbed both hands over his face. We needed options. For what? She asked. If your father became unreasonable, I said. You mean if I refused? I mean if you stopped acting in your own interest. My interest now includes paying your loan. The studio supports the catalog. The catalog existed before your studio, and it's sitting there doing nothing. Kimberly began crying. Stephen turned toward her. Don't do this. You used my name. I was protecting us. From my father, from losing everything. The room became quiet. That was the complete answer. Stephen hadn't arranged the pamphlets because he worried about grief. He hadn't hired Alan because he feared I was confused. He hadn't pushed Kimberly toward the trust because he respected Yvonne's wishes. His studio owed $95,000 on August 15th. He needed the quarterly royalties. He needed control of the catalog. He needed Bayou Rise to hire his studio, so someone else's money could become his business income. If I cooperated, Kimberly would replace me. If I refused, they would use Alan's notes and an interdiction petition. Kimberly had believed she was protecting her mother's legacy. Stephen had made protecting his loan sound like the same thing. I stood. Keep the folder. Stephen blocked the doorway with one arm. You're walking away from a reasonable proposal. Move your arm. We can solve this tonight. No, the bank deadline is real. So is my answer. He lowered his arm. As I passed Kimberly, she grabbed my sleeve. Daddy, I didn't know about the petition. You knew about the account. I thought the money stayed ours. It was never yours. She released me. I drove home without turning on the radio. Diane called the next morning. Her associate had located the recorded loan documents connected to the studio expansion. The amount and due date matched what Kimberly had said. $95,000. August 15th. The collateral included the studio equipment and its business property. If Stephen couldn't pay or refinance, the lender could begin taking control of both. Now we know why he can't wait, Diane said. I looked at Yvonne's lyric page on the kitchen table. The old road wasn't the thing Stephen wanted open. He wanted a road from her songs directly into his bank. Diane asked me to bring every Bayou Rise document to her office. I arrived with the fireproof lockbox in my trunk. She came outside and watched me carry it in. You could have brought the papers, she said. I didn't want to leave anything behind. Fair enough. We used her conference room. She spread the documents across the long table by date. The first group contained the original copyright assignments. Yvonne had transferred her songs to Bayou Rise in 2004. Later, songs had been added through shorter assignment forms. The second group contained tax records and annual reports. The third contained the operating agreement. Diane placed that one in front of me, read the management section. I read it again. The language was formal, but the meaning was simple. Bayou Rise was managed by one managing member. That person was me. Yvonne owned an economic interest while she was alive. She received the benefit of her work. She didn't want voting duties, payment instructions, or contract administration. The agreement gave those responsibilities to me. Did Yvonne ever amend this? Diane asked. No. Did you? No. Did you appoint Kimberly? No. Did you appoint Stephen? Absolutely not. Then nobody else has authority to change the company's payee. She turned to the notarized letter we had sent in April. This didn't create your authority. It reminded the administrator that your authority already existed. Why did they still move $11,000? Somebody made a processing error, an expensive error. Yes. Can Stephen claim Yvonne's death transferred control? No. Her death affected her economic interest. It didn't erase the company or rewrite its management. What does Kimberly receive through the trust? Whatever interest Yvonne placed there, subject to the company agreement. That may entitle the trust to distributions. It doesn't make Kimberly manager, so she can receive what belongs to the trust, correct? But she can't tell the administrator where Bayou Rise gets paid, correct? I leaned back. That distinction had been sitting in the paperwork for more than 20 years. Yvonne could leave her personal assets through her trust. Kimberly could administer them. Neither action replaced me inside Bayou Rise. Diane opened her laptop. I verified the company's standing this morning. It remains active with the state. She showed me the record. My name remained listed as the management contact. She had also checked the copyright registrations. Bayou Rise was still listed as the owner. No transfer documents were filed, she said. No security interest appears against the catalog. Stephen hasn't managed to pledge it. Could he? Not without valid authority. What if Kimberly signs as trustee? The lender would have a serious problem. I looked down at Yvonne's signature. Then why did Stephen think this would work? He expected you to sign the management agreement, and if I didn't, he expected a court to remove me. Probably. Once I was removed, could Kimberly take over? Not automatically. A court-appointed representative might exercise your rights, but the operating agreement would still matter. So, the petition was pressure. It could have become more than pressure. Don't underestimate it. I didn't. That afternoon, Diane arranged a secure conference call with Tracy Richardson, the administrator's regional representative. Tracy's voice was direct and quick. She had already reviewed the account history. I want to apologize for the partial transfer, she said. It shouldn't have occurred. Why did it? I asked. A processor saw the trust documents and death certificate. They treated the request as an estate payee update. But Bayou Rise isn't Yvonne's estate, correct? Did nobody read the company name? They did, but they assumed the trust succeeded to control. An assumption moved $11,000. Yes, sir. Diane stepped in. What is the current status? The legacy fund account is flagged. The transferred amount is subject to reversal. No future distribution will be redirected without a notarized instruction from Mr. Shaw. Can Kimberly stop the reversal? No. Can she submit more trust documents? She can submit them. They won't change the authority record. What if a competency petition is filed? I asked. Tracy paused. A filed petition alone wouldn't change anything. We would require a court order that specifically affects Mr. Shaw's authority. And there isn't one. No, there won't be one. Diane glanced at me, but said nothing. Tracy continued, "We're adding a restricted authority note. Any payment instruction must carry Mr. Shaw's notarized signature and pass direct verification." "Direct verification with whom?" I asked. "With you. Not a family member? No. Not a trustee? No. Not Bayou Sound Studio? No." That was the answer I needed. Diane asked Tracy to put everything in writing. "I can provide an authority confirmation," Tracy said. "It will identify the company, the catalog account, and the sole authorized signature." "When?" I asked. "By tomorrow. Send it to Diane and me." "I will." Before ending the call, Tracy asked one more question. "Are you planning any catalog events?" "Not that I know of." "We received an inquiry about a tribute release." "From whom?" "Bayou Sound Studio." "When?" "Last week." "What did they ask?" "They requested a representative for a summer launch event. They said new management would be announced." Diane wrote something on her pad. "Did you accept?" she asked. "No, I requested proof of authority." "Did they provide any?" "Only the trust pages and the pending management proposal." "The one Leonard didn't sign," Diane said. "Correct." I thanked Tracy and ended the call. Stephen wasn't waiting for control before making plans. He was selling the appearance of control while hoping I'd be forced to supply it later. Diane closed her laptop. He'll probably invite Tracy again. Why would she go? To observe, to protect the administrator's interests. Would that help us? It could. I don't want a trap. Neither do I. We need clean facts. The next morning, Tracy's letter arrived by secure email. It named Bayou Rise Publishing as the lawful payee. It identified me as the sole person authorized to direct payment changes. It rejected the trust as a substitute for company authority. The last paragraph addressed the transferred $11,000. The administrator had begun reversal procedures. Final recovery depended on the receiving bank completing its review. I printed 3 copies. Diane kept 1. I placed 1 in the lockbox. The third went into the folder that stayed with me. Then we visited a notary. I signed a second instruction requiring direct telephone verification for every future payee request. Diane attached the certified operating agreement and Tracy's authority letter. The notary pressed her seal into the paper. Diane checked every page before sending it. "What happens now?" I asked. "Nothing changes unless you authorize it. That's the point." "Yes." On the way home, I stopped at a liquor store. I bought the same small batch bourbon Yvonne used to give me on our anniversary. I hadn't opened a bottle since she died. At home, I placed the certified agreement on the kitchen table. Beside it, I set Tracy's letter and my doctor's capacity report. Then, I poured 1 glass of bourbon. I didn't raise it, I didn't say anything. I sat in Yvonne's chair and read the 3 documents again. The doctor confirmed I could manage my affairs. The state record confirmed the company remained active. The administrator confirmed that only my notarized signature could redirect payment. Stephen could make claims. Kimberly could sign trust papers. Alan could fill notebooks. None of those things changed who controlled Bayou Rise. I finished the bourbon slowly and washed the glass. The next week, the law office preparing the interdiction petition received Diane's notice. It included my physician's report and a warning that any filing must disclose the disputed royalty transfer. Their attorney called Diane. "He says his client presented this as an emergency," she told me. "What emergency?" "Financial decline, missing mail, unpaid obligations." My mail was missing because Kimberly took it. We included Eugene's statement. "What unpaid obligations?" "They haven't identified any." "Will they file?" He wouldn't say. "Who hired them?" "The engagement letter is with Kimberly. Who's paying?" They wouldn't disclose that. I already knew the likely answer. 2 days later, Kimberly left a voicemail. "Daddy, I need to talk to you without Stephen." I didn't return the call immediately. That evening, she came to the house and knocked. She no longer had a key. I opened the door but didn't invite her inside. Her eyes were swollen. "The lawyer called me," she said. "I know. He sent me your doctor's report." "Good. I didn't know Stephen told them you missed bills." "I haven't missed any." "I know that now. You could have asked me." She looked down. "I thought you'd say no to everything. That isn't the same as being unable to decide. I understand." "Do you?" She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Stephen says we still need to move forward." "With what?" The catalog launch? What catalog launch? He rented the Atchafalaya room. I stared at her. When? The first weekend in August. Why? He says once people see the support, you'll understand the opportunity. Whose support? Musicians, local press, family friends. Did he invite the royalty administrator? Yes. I thought of Tracy's question during the conference call. What is he announcing? Kimberly's voice dropped. The legacy fund, the reissue project, and management? She didn't answer. I waited. Finally, she said, he plans to announce that I'm taking over Mom's business affairs. He doesn't have my signature. He thinks you'll give it before then. What do you think? She looked toward the kitchen behind me. I think he's running out of time. He had a little more than 2 months before the bank deadline. I had the authority letter in a folder 10 feet away. Stephen still believed one of us would surrender first. He sent the invitations in June. The front showed Yvonne holding her accordion. The same photograph from the memorial appeared inside. Beneath it, gold lettering announced a tribute concert and legacy fund launch. August 8th. The Atchafalaya Room. Bayou Sound Studio presented the event. At the bottom, smaller print promised an announcement concerning the future management of the Yvonne LeBlanc catalog. My invitation arrived by regular mail. Eugene brought it into the shop himself. At least this one reached you, he said. I turned it over. Tickets were $35. A portion supposedly benefited the legacy fund. Can they sell tickets in Yvonne's name? Eugene asked. They can hold a tribute concert. What about the fund? It exists. With your money in it? Part of my money, he pointed at the management announcement. What are you going to do? I'm going. You buying a ticket? I haven't decided. He took the invitation back. If a man uses your wife's picture to invite you somewhere, he should provide a chair. Diane agreed that I should attend. Quietly, she said, don't warn him what we have. He knows about the operating agreement. He knows it exists. I'm not sure he understands it. He had somebody review it. He had somebody review selected trust pages. That isn't the same thing. What if he cancels the management announcement? Then the public problem becomes smaller. He won't cancel. Probably not. Diane called Tracy while I was in her office. The administrator had received a formal invitation too. Tracy said Stephen described her as an honored industry guest. Did you agree to speak? Diane asked. No. Did he ask you to confirm Kimberly's authority? He said authority had been resolved within the family. I leaned toward the phone. It hasn't. I understand, Mr. Shaw. Are you attending? I believe I should. Why? Because Bayou Sound Studio is using our organization's name in press materials. I need to hear what they represent. Diane said, if Leonard asks you a direct question during the event, will you answer accurately? Yes, that's all we need. After the call, Diane began placing documents into her leather folder. You're bringing those now? I asked. I'm preparing them now. The event is 6 weeks away. I dislike rushing. That was one reason Yvonne trusted her. By July, posters appeared at restaurants and music shops. A local radio station interviewed Stephen. I heard the segment while repairing an old mixing board. The host asked what people could expect. Stephen sounded relaxed. We're bringing Yvonne's music into a new era, he said. Her family has established a fund to support preservation, reissues, and new licensing opportunities. The host asked whether I was involved. Leonard supports keeping Yvonne's songs alive, Stephen replied. That wasn't an answer. Then he said Kimberly would oversee the family's business interests. I turned off the radio. 2 days later, a reporter called the house. Mr. Shaw, may I ask how it feels to pass management to your daughter? I haven't passed anything. The reporter became quiet. Mr. Barrett said the family reached an agreement. He was mistaken. Will you attend the launch? Yes. Would you like to comment further? No. I called Diane. Stephen told the press I agreed. Did the reporter record you? She asked permission before we spoke. Good. Why is that good? Because your denial now has a date. The event's online announcement changed that evening. The phrase management transition disappeared. It was replaced with next generation leadership. Stephen was adjusting his words without changing the claim. Kimberly came to the shop near the end of July. She stood beside the workbench while I tested a microphone preamp. Can you turn that off? She asked. I switched off the signal. She placed a folded event program on the bench. Stephen wants to know where you'll sit. Anywhere. He wants you at the family table. Will Diane sit there? If you bring her, I'm bringing her. Kimberly nodded. The program listed 3 musical performances, a video tribute, and the Legacy Fund presentation. Stephen's name appeared as executive producer. Kimberly's appeared as her successor trustee and legacy director. My name appeared beneath special acknowledgement. I handed it back. What does legacy director mean? It's only an event title. Does it come with a job? Stephen says it helps people understand. Understand what? That I'm taking responsibility for Mom's work. You're a trustee of her personal trust. I know. That doesn't make you director of Bayou Rise. She looked at the floor. I know what Diane's letter says. Then why let him print this? Because the event is already paid for. With what money? Studio money. Money he needs for the bank. She closed her eyes. Please don't do this there. Do what? Humiliate him. He's making the announcement. You could talk privately before. We did. He's under pressure. He created that pressure. He could lose the studio. I know. She leaned against the bench. Mom loved that place. Your mother recorded there twice. She believed in Stephen. She wanted him to succeed. That's what I mean. No, it isn't. Kimberly picked up the program. Are you going to stop the concert? No. The fund launch? No. She looked surprised. What are you going to do? Listen. She waited for more. I turned the preamp back on. The needle moved steadily across the meter. Kimberly left without saying goodbye. On August 7th, Diane received a copy of the final press release. It said Kimberly had assumed day-to-day oversight of the Yvonne LeBlanc catalog. Bayou Sound Studio had been selected for a multi-year restoration and licensing partnership. Neither statement was true. The release also said the first reissue project was funded through royalty income directed to the Legacy Fund. That statement admitted where they expected the money to come from. Diane printed it. Now he's committed in writing, she said. He'll say it's promotional language. Let him. The next morning, I put on the same dark suit I'd worn to the memorial. I opened the cabinet and looked at Yvonne's cup. Then I touched the folded lyric page in my shirt pocket. Diane picked me up at 6. The parking lot at the Atchafalaya room was nearly full. A poster of Yvonne stood beside the entrance. Inside, round tables faced a low stage. Blue lights shone across a backdrop printed with her name. Stephen's studio logo occupied both lower corners. A volunteer handed me a program. You're Mr. Shaw, she said. Yes. We saved your table near the front. Diane and I sat together. Eugene joined us a few minutes later. He wore the brown jacket despite the August heat. You look uncomfortable, I told him. I am. Take off the jacket. It has good pockets. Across the room, Tracy sat beside 2 representatives from local music organizations. She gave Diane a small nod. The reporters occupied a table near the stage. Kimberly came over before the concert began. She wore a dark green dress that had belonged to Yvonne. I recognized it immediately. Mom wore this for the festival anniversary, she said. I remember. Stephen thought it would mean something. It does. She touched my shoulder. Can we get through tonight without fighting? I didn't come to fight. Then why is Diane carrying that folder? Diane always carries a folder. Kimberly looked at her. Diane smiled politely. The music began at 7. 3 groups performed Yvonne's songs. They played well. I listened without speaking. During the second song, Eugene pressed his knuckles against his mouth. After the performances, the lights came up. A short video showed photographs from Yvonne's career. Some came from my albums. I didn't know how Stephen had copied them. The last image showed Yvonne outside Bayou Sound Studio. Words appeared beneath it. Her music, her family, her future. Stephen walked onto the stage. He thanked the musicians, sponsors, reporters, and rights professionals. He thanked Kimberly for trusting his vision. Then he thanked me. Leonard kept these songs safe for decades, he said. But preservation can't mean standing still. People turned toward my table. I kept my hands folded. Stephen described remastered releases and new commercial licensing. He announced that Bayou Sound Studio would begin work the following month. Then he invited Kimberly onto the stage. She walked up slowly. Stephen placed one hand on her shoulder. Tonight, we officially launched the Yvonne LeBlanc Legacy Fund under Kimberly Barrett's leadership. Applause moved through the room. Kimberly smiled, but her eyes found mine. Stephen continued. As Yvonne's successor trustee, Kimberly has assumed responsibility for the catalog's business affairs. Bayou Sound Studio will manage restoration, licensing preparation, and future releases. That was no longer vague language. He had named the authority, the catalog, and his own financial role. A reporter raised a camera. Stephen faced it directly. Diane placed one hand on her closed folder. I didn't move. Stephen talked for another 4 minutes. He announced a projected release date. He thanked the bank for working with his studio. He called the management transition complete. Then he looked toward me. Family should be the first people trusted with family business. A few people applauded again. Stephen smiled as if the difficult part was over. When he finally lowered the microphone, I stood. I waited until the room settled. Stephen raised the microphone again. Leonard, we can talk afterward. I have one question. This isn't the time. You made it the time. Several people turned toward Tracy. I walked past the family table and stopped beside her. I didn't approach the stage. Ms. Richardson, will you stand, please? She stood. Stephen's smile disappeared. I said, you represent the company that administers these royalties? Yes. Who is it authorized to pay? Bayou Rise Publishing. Who can change that payee? The sole authorized signature belongs to Leonard Shaw. Nobody clapped. Nobody moved. Stephen gripped the microphone. That's an outdated administrative record. Tracy faced him. No, Mr. Barrett. We verified it this afternoon. Kimberly stepped away from him. Stephen said, the trust transferred authority to my wife. No, Tracy replied. The trust governs certain personal assets. It doesn't replace Bayou Rise Publishing's management authority. Diane opened her folder. She removed the certified operating agreement and my notarized instruction. Then she handed copies to both reporters. Stephen came down from the stage. You can't distribute private company documents. I can distribute my own documents, I said. He turned toward Diane. You planned this. We verified your claims, she said. That's different. Kimberly stared at the operating agreement. Where does it say Daddy controls it? Diane opened another copy. Section 4. Bayou Rise has one managing member, Leonard. What about Mom's trust? It never owned the authority Stephen promised tonight. Stephen reached for the paper. Diane pulled it back. Ask politely. His face darkened. You people are destroying a legitimate project. I looked toward the reporters. Kimberly covered her mouth. Stephen said, that transfer was legal. Tracy answered before I could. It was processed incorrectly. She opened a message on her phone. The receiving bank completed its review this afternoon. The full $11,000 is being reversed to Bayou Rise. That was the part even I hadn't known. Diane looked at Tracy. All of it? All of it. Stephen stood completely still. Tracy continued. The legacy fund account never lawfully received royalty money. Future distributions remain payable to Bayou Rise. Any change requires Mr. Shaw's notarized signature and direct confirmation. One reporter asked, does Bayou Sound Studio have a licensing agreement? No, I said. A restoration agreement? No. Any management authority? No. Stephen lifted the microphone. This is a family disagreement being misrepresented in public. Eugene spoke from our table. You're holding the microphone, son. A few people looked down. Stephen placed the microphone on the nearest table. Kimberly turned toward him. You said the administrator approved everything. They were going to. You said Daddy's authority ended when Mom died. That's what the trust advisor told us. Which advisor? Stephen didn't answer. Was it Alan? No. Then who? This isn't helping. She looked at the printed press release, then at the banner behind the stage. You put my name on all of this? You agreed. I agreed because you said it was legal. You signed the account forms. Her face changed. That was the first moment I saw her understand how he intended to protect himself. If the account caused trouble, Kimberly had signed. If the petition caused trouble, Kimberly was the named petitioner. Stephen remained the helpful husband. She removed the legacy director badge from her dress. I'm done, she said. He followed her toward the side door. We have a bank meeting Monday. You have a bank meeting. Kimberly. She kept walking. The event didn't explode into shouting. There were no police and no dramatic struggle. People simply began gathering their things. The reporters spoke with Tracy and Diane. The musicians packed their instruments. A volunteer removed the donation box from the entrance. I remained beside the stage while Yvonne's photograph looked down at the half-empty room. 1 week later, August 15th arrived. Stephen didn't make the $95,000 balloon payment. The bank gave him a short written extension, but he still couldn't refinance. Without the catalog income, his projections didn't support the debt. By September, the lender began foreclosure proceedings against the studio property and equipment. I didn't cause that. I also didn't rescue him. Stephen called me once. If you loan me the money, I can repay Bayou Rise with interest. No. You're letting the studio die over a family dispute. The bank loan isn't a family dispute. Yvonne believed in this place. She didn't promise to pay for it. He hung up. The interdiction petition was never filed. After Diane sent my physician's evaluation and the royalty records, the family attorney told Kimberly he wouldn't proceed. He also explained that false claims about unpaid bills would have to be supported under oath. Kimberly withdrew her name from the matter. Then she separated from Stephen. She rented a small apartment across town and began seeing a counselor. For nearly 3 months, we spoke only through Diane about trust paperwork. That distance was necessary. In November, Kimberly asked to meet at the shop. She arrived without folders. I took your mail, she said. I waited. The quarterly statement came while you were in the garage. I put it in my purse. Why? Stephen wanted the account information. You gave it to him. Yes. What else? I opened the legacy fund. I signed the payee request. I let Alan come into your house. And the petition. I signed the engagement letter. I didn't read the draft. That doesn't excuse it. I know. She kept both hands on the workbench. I kept telling myself I was protecting Mom. Really, I was protecting my marriage from a debt Stephen hid until it was almost due. Did you know the full amount? Not at first. When did you know? Before the family dinner. That hurt, but it was an honest answer. Why didn't you tell me? I thought if the catalog helped the studio, nobody lost anything. I lost the right to decide. She nodded. Yes. I didn't forgive her that afternoon. I did allow her to finish speaking. Over the following months, she returned every piece of mail she'd kept. She closed the legacy fund after the reversal cleared. She provided statements showing no other money had left. Diane supervised the trust administration. Eventually, I let Kimberly attend quarterly Bayou Rise meetings. There were rules. Diane attended. Every decision was written down. Kimberly received copies, but she couldn't direct payments or sign for the company. She didn't complain. The following spring, a documentary licensed one of Yvonne's songs. The payment appeared on the quarterly statement. Kimberly sat across from me at Diane's table. What would Mom have done with this? She asked. Set aside the taxes first. Kimberly smiled. That sounds like you. It kept her out of trouble. We paid the proper trust distribution. We covered catalog expenses. Then we placed the remaining company funds into reserve, exactly as Yvonne and I had always done. Bayou Rise stayed with me, not because I wanted to punish my daughter. It stayed with me because promises don't change when someone else needs money. I still keep Yvonne's cup beside the coffee maker. Her folded lyric remains in my shirt pocket most mornings. The paper has softened along the creases, but the last line is still clear. Keep the old road open. Now I understand it my own way. You can leave a road open without handing someone your keys. If this story meant something to you, tell me where you're listening from, share what you would have done, and subscribe for more stories like mine.